The movie begins amid the hallowed halls of ancient Carta Monastery in Romania. Here we find two courageous nuns, Sister Victoria and Sister Jennifer, embarking on a risky journey down a dimly lit corridor. As they venture deeper into the mysterious depths of the monastery, they are greeted by an ominous door that sends chills down one's spine. Scratched across this door are the words, "God ends here," which hint at the presence of an unholy force lurking just beyond. Sister Jennifer pushes open the heavy door. She's greeted by an eerie silence as she searches for a mysterious artifact that holds powers. Outside, the young and devoted Sister Victoria, her heart pounding with both fear and hope, kneels in prayer, waiting anxiously for her companion. Suddenly, a scream pierces the silence and Sister Jennifer emerges from the room drenched in blood. In her trembling hands, she clutches a key. With desperation in her voice, she tells Sister Victoria that an ancient evil within requires a living vessel to break free from its chains. She solemnly acknowledges that this dark force will now relentlessly pursue her, and that she knows what must be done. In an instant, unseen hands drag her back into the abyss from where she came. Panic-stricken, Sister Victoria stumbles backwards, witnessing a chilling sight. Emerging from the shadows is the demon nun Valak, who is both sinister and formidable. Her heart races as she clutches the key. As Valak moves ever closer, Sister Victoria looks towards the heavens, praying for forgiveness for what she is about to do. With a final plea for mercy, Sister Victoria throws herself towards a window. She makes the ultimate sacrifice, choosing death over becoming a vessel for the monstrous evil. The next scene unfolds as high-ranking officials at the Vatican, the center of the Catholic Church, hear about Sister Victoria's tragic suicide. Knowing they have to get to the bottom of this mystery, they call upon a priest named Father Anthony Burke. Father Burke is handed a critical mission to investigate the shadowy circumstances surrounding Sister Victoria's death. He's provided a contact list, and inside that, there is the name of a local man who had the misfortune of discovering Sister Victoria's lifeless body. Also, there's the name of a companion, Irene, a young woman preparing to become a nun, who they believe can be of great help in his investigation. Soon after, Father Burke and the young postulant Irene form a brave duo and embark on a mission to uncover the truth. They decide to seek out a local man named Frenchie, who had earlier stumbled upon Sister Victoria's body. They believe that he can guide them to the exact location where he made the eerie discovery. Their journey takes them through the mystic landscapes of Romania, and soon they arrive at Frenchie's home. Father Burke, with a sense of urgency, introduces himself and Irene to Frenchie and explains the grave reason for their visit. The trio reaches an ancient abbey. Inside, Frenchie discovers Victoria's body sitting upright in the old icebox, despite him leaving it lying down. Father Burke reassures him that body movements after death are normal. Father Burke opens Victoria's fingers and finds the key she held. They then decide to give her a proper burial. As they solemnly lay her to rest, a chilling sound fills the air. A bell on a gravestone starts ringing. The group freezes, but Father Burke, ever the voice of reason, explains that during the time of the plague, bells were tied to the deceased in case they were buried alive, so that they could alert people. He soothes their nerves, assuring them the ringing might simply be due to the night breeze. After paying respects, they head back to the abbey. In the chapel, they encounter the strict abbess, who questions their purpose. Father Burke explains they're there to investigate a recent tragic death in the convent, expressing the higher officials' concern for the church's safety. He requests to speak with the sisters, but is informed they're observing a vow of silence in honor of Sister Victoria. The abbess insists they wait until the next day. As the night descends upon the Carta Monastery, Father Burke and Irene retreat to their rooms, while Frenchie decides it's time for him to leave the abbey. The wind rustles through the trees as Frenchie makes his way past the dark, whispering woods. As he walks, a shadow catches his eye. He gazes, and to his disbelief, it appears to be Sister Victoria wandering through the woods. His heart races as he decides to follow her, only to come face to face with not the soul of Victoria, but a demonic nun, her eyes filled with malice. In a moment of panic and instinct, Frenchie scrambles to the ground and picks up a fallen cross. Holding it out as a shield, he backs away from the demon. The night air is thick with tension as Frenchie clutches the cross tightly, trying to escape the evil that lurks in the woods. Meanwhile, back at the lodge, Father Burke and Irene find solace in each other's company. Irene shares with Father Burke a secret. She tells him that as a child, she was plagued by visions. She confides that her visions were so vivid that word of them reached the church, and that's why they've taken a special interest in her. And the visions all share one note: Mary points the way. The reason will be revealed later. As Irene shares her past, Father Burke is reminded of a haunting memory of his own. He opens up to Irene about a dark chapter from his time in France during the war. He was stationed there and was tasked with investigating a young boy named Daniel who was said to have visions much like Irene. Father Burke recounts how he was convinced that Daniel was possessed by an evil spirit with the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He followed the church's rituals and laws to perform an exorcism on the young boy. However, things didn't go as planned. The forces they were battling were too strong. The exorcism took a terrible toll on Daniel, who suffered severe injuries. The once lively boy was reduced to a fragile state, and despite all efforts, he passed away a few days later. Father Burke's voice breaks as he shares this. He's been burdened with guilt and sorrow ever since, feeling responsible for the loss of young Daniel. The eerie night at the Cardam Monastery brings more chills and thrills as Father Burke is suddenly awakened by the sound of a radio playing on its own. He stumbles out of bed following the sound, and as he gets close, the radio falls silent. The silence is then broken by the unsettling sound of footsteps and a ghostly figure that resembles Daniel, the young boy from Father Burke's haunting past, but this time twisted into a demonic form. With his heart pounding, Father Burke chases the ghost, but Daniel seems to be playing a sinister game of hide-and-seek, appearing and disappearing in the shadows. The chase leads Father Burke to the graveyard, where the gravestones loom like silent watchers. There, behind a tombstone, Father Burke spots the figure of Daniel again, but when he gets closer, Daniel has vanished. Suddenly, the air turns cold as the demonic version of Daniel appears right in front of him, with a snake slithering out of his mouth. The snake lunges at Father Burke, who tumbles backward into an open grave, with a coffin, and the gravestone bears his own name. The earth shakes as the grave closes, trapping him inside the coffin, buried alive. Simultaneously, Irene is awakened in the lodge. She then sees the dark form of a nun moving on the wall, inching closer. Her heart races as she spots the reflection of the nun in a mirror right behind her. When she turns, there's nothing there. Meanwhile, from his buried coffin, Father Burke rings a bell for help. Irene hears the ringing, but as she reaches the graveyard, the air fills with the sound of countless bells tolling from the graves, confusing her. She closes her eyes, takes a deep breath, and listens intently, focusing on the sound of Father Burke's bell. With newfound determination, Irene races through the graveyard to where Father Burke is buried. She starts digging frantically, and Father Burke inside the coffin hears the sounds from above, just as the demon launches another attack on him. Irene breaks through the coffin and Father Burke is pulled from the grave, gasping for air. They collapse on the ground, and Father Burke, still shaking, tells Irene that a potent evil dwells within the monastery. He then notices ancient books that were in the coffin with him. His eyes widen as he remarks that these books might hold the answers they are desperately seeking. The following day, Irene and Father Burke return to the abbey. Burke hands Irene a key which he had found on Victoria's body earlier, and tells her to find the abbess on her own to find the answers to why Victoria kept the key firmly on herself. Inside the abbey, Irene sees Sister Ruth praying in a serene chapel. As she tries to talk to her sister, Oana stops her, saying that it is not polite to interrupt a prayer. Sister Oana introduces herself and takes Irene to another room. Back at the abbey, Father Burke is in a room filled with ancient books and documents. He stumbles upon an old drawing of a sinister demon named Valak. As he speaks the demon's name out loud, a door with iron bars slams shut, isolating him from the rest of the abbey and from Irene. Meanwhile, Irene and Sister Oana are talking about Victoria's mysterious death. Sister Oana tells Irene about the Abbey's dark past. In a chilling flashback, we see that the Abbey was originally built by the Duke of St. Carta, who used black magic to summon the demons from hell. But the church's knights intervened and sealed the Hellmouth with a holy relic containing the blood of Christ. The Abbey was then handed over to nuns tasked to continuously pray to keep the evil at bay. However, during World War II, bombs damaged the Abbey and cracked open the sealed gateway. Suddenly, Sister Abigail enters and sternly tells Oana to go pray. She also tells Irene she should leave, but Sister Oana informs Irene that the gate is locked until the morning. Sister Oana then leads Irene into a room, which turns out to be the very place where Sister Victoria had jumped to her death at the beginning of the movie. Oana leaves and locks Irene inside. Outside, a storm gathers and Irene wakes up from a terrifying vision. She sees a figure of a nun praying and then the spirit of Sister Victoria reenacting her fatal jump. Suddenly, the room's doors open and Irene catches a glimpse of the Valak nun at the end of the hallway. Irene hears a voice beckoning her to follow. She roams the hallways until she comes across a door marked, "God ends here." The door creaks open on its own. Just then, the terrifying figure of Valak emerges, trying to drag Irene in. As Valak chases her, Sister Oana rescues Irene, pulling her into a small corner. Oana tells Irene to gather her things and meet her in the chapel to pray for protection against the increasingly powerful evil. When Irene reaches the chapel, she finds Sister Abigail praying next to a dead body. Irene pulls back the cloth covering the body and is horrified to see its Sister Oana with wounds resembling crucifixion on her hands. Then the chapel doors burst open and 9 nuns enter. Sister Ruth urgently tells Irene they must pray together to keep the evil at bay, instructing her to not stop praying, no matter what she experiences. As they pray, the nuns, except for Irene, are violently thrown across the room by an unseen force. Irene is momentarily shaken, but she resumes praying. Now we cut to Father Burke, who recalls Frenchie mentioning an alternative entrance to the Abbey via the deliveries room. As he approaches the room, Burke is cornered by the zombified form of Sister Victoria. Suddenly, Frenchie bursts onto the scene wielding a shotgun, with a swing of his weapon decapitating the zombie, saving Burke. Then Irene hears Burke pounding at the door and she breaks from her prayer to let him and Frenchie in. She explains they've been praying to ward off the evil. Burke looks at the empty room, asks who she's been praying with. Irene turns to the room, seeing it is deserted, except for the single dead body. The shocking revelation hits her. The nuns she had seen were ghosts. Irene unveils the dead body, recognizing it as the decayed remains of Sister Oana. Suddenly, the corpse gets up and stabs Burke with a cross. The trio wrestles the corpse to the ground while Burke performs an exorcism. The cross bursts into flames and sets the corpse ablaze. Frenchie ends the ordeal by shooting it. Soon after, they deduce that Sister Victoria was the last nun and took her own life to prevent Valak from possessing her body to escape the Abbey. Determined, they ventured to the catacombs to find the relic that can seal the evil away. Inside, a statue of Mary points towards a secret door, meaning of Irene's recurrent vision. Using the key from Sister Victoria, they reveal a hidden compartment containing the holy relic which contains the blood of Jesus Christ. Father Burke hands the relic to Irene, placing it around her neck. They press on towards the portal, beyond the ominous "God ends here" door, but soon become separated and terrorized. Irene finds herself drawn to a room where candles ignite themselves, revealing a sinister pentagram. Out of nowhere, dark shapes with bags made of rough cloth covering their heads suddenly emerge near her. Outside, Frenchie hears Irene's cries for help. Blasting the doors open with his shotgun, he finds the shadowy figures surrounding an unseen object. They disperse, revealing a levitating Irene, with her head obscured by a blood-soaked burlap sack. Frenchie races to Irene and removes the sack, only to find Valak has possessed her. The demon, using Irene's body, flings Frenchie and takes his shotgun. In a desperate moment, Frenchie smears some blood from the holy relic onto her face, forcing Valak to leave her body. A chase ensues and Irene is thrown into a pool of water where she loses the relic. Burke is now in the room and attacked by the ghost of Daniel. Valak reemerges and begins to strangle Irene underwater as she frantically reaches for the relic. Father Burke, despite his injuries, bravely begins an exorcism aimed at Valak, but is hurled away by Valak. This diversion grants Irene the time to grab the relic, break the vial, and fill her mouth with the blood of Christ. When Valak lifts her out of the water, Irene spits the holy blood onto Valak's face, causing it to die and dissolve. The next morning, the trio have survived the nightmarish ordeal, leave the Abbey with relief and gratitude. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.